Hello and welcome to yet another edition of News 18's Yuva Bharat in association with IIMUN, a student body that's been wanting to reach out to youth across the world to say that let's create a movement to unite nations, but do it the Bharat way. And we have the president of IIMUN, Rishabh Shah, with us. But today the conversation is going to be around we as a country. Do we need a narrative reset? Do we need to connect with who we really are and break away from this disjointed narrative that we've been fed over the last 7 decades? Somewhere that which has made us not even realize the depth of our civilization, depth of who we are and where we come from, and somewhere believe that what everybody is telling us is actually true and not actually look for the truth. Shodh, which many say. J. Sai Deepak, advocate with the Honorable Supreme Court and somebody who's very vocal. He's also writing a book. He's calling it the Bharat Trilogy. So somebody who knows a little a thing or two about trilogies is also with us, but it's on cue with J. Sai Deepak. And on trilogy, let's go across to Amish. Amish Tripathi, celebrated author and also now doing some duties for the country in London as curator of the Nehru Museum there. Wonderful. Thank you, gentlemen. Over to you. The stage is yours. Please take the discourse forward. Amish, I'd like you to lead and then J. Sai Deepak.
First of all, it's such a pleasure to be with Sai. I think he's doing wonderful work for Dharma and for our country. Rishabh, if you're the future of our India, then our India is safe. I know I've told you that very often, but I will say it once again. In terms of our narrative, I think one of the, there's this lovely African proverb that until the lions get their own storytellers, the stories of the hunt will glorify the hunters. The hunters have long gone, and India suffered, for nearly a millennium, for nearly 1,000 years. First with the Turkic colonial invaders, and then with the European colonial invaders. And regrettably, the history that is taught to us, our conception of ourselves, is defined more by what those invaders told us about us, rather than our own perspective. To just kick off, if I can just say a few things that appear, straight away wrong in the narrative that we tell ourselves, especially educated Indians, what we believe about ourselves. One of the first lies that we believe about ourselves is that the British created India, which is a load of nonsense. It is not true. India, before the treaties of Westphalia, political nation states didn't exist anywhere in the world. Nations existed as cultural concepts. Culturally, India was a nation for many, many thousands of years. The Vishnu Puran, which is at the minimum at least 2,000 years old, I believe it's a lot older, has this wonderful line, Uttaram yat samudrasya himadrasya chaiva dakshinam varsham tada bharatam nama bharti yatra santatihi. It describes essentially the Indian subcontinent and says that this is our land. This is the land of Bharat. And this was before England even had a conception of itself. King Alfred came only 1,000 years ago. So the British didn't create us. The English nation was created long after we had a concept of our own nation. Another narrative, that we have about ourselves, that our ancestors were a bunch of losers who kept losing every battle for the last 1,000 years, and we are essentially a bunch of cowards. We lost battles, that is true. But I think the true narrative is that our ancestors were the toughest buggers around, because they're the only ones from the pre-Bronze Age civilizations that kept their culture alive, because they never surrendered. They kept fighting. There are battles they lost. There are many battles they won as well. Most importantly, they never surrendered. Unlike the Zoroastrian Persians, a great culture, unlike Pharaonic Egypt, unlike pagan Greece, pagan Greco-Roman, they all surrendered. We are still here. We are still standing because of the bravery of our ancestors. There are so many things we need to learn about ourselves, which will change how we see our own future, which is why this is, I think, one of the most important discussions to have. It needs to be debated a lot more. I'll leave the stage now for Sai and Rishabh.
Sai, over to you.
Yeah. So Thanks for hosting this discussion. And I think it's a sign of things to come when a mainstream media channel decides to host a topic on Bharat and gives, let's say, space to voices such as Amish, which I think are extremely important. As someone who's read all of his books with a lot of interest and a lot of passion, it's a pleasure to actually share space with him. Um, I've heard this word narrative being used very often, at least since 2014. And in my limited experience, in my interaction with the student community and the age group between 18 to 30, or even 18 to 25, it's been my experience that the sense of pessimism that sometimes which we have with respect to this age bracket is perhaps misplaced because we ourselves have a lot of preconceived notions about this particular age bracket. I think it's a question of reaching out to them and reaching out to them with a sense of credibility and a sense of measured passion. And notwithstanding the kind of distractions and influences that they are subjected to thanks to social media, whatnot, I have come off fairly optimistic in my vision of the future of Bharat, largely because in every campus, and perhaps the most, let's call it Vampathy campus available in the country, even in such institutions, I would say 30% is still open to your point of view. And at least 10% is sitting on the fence. Okay. So I think that's a significant start. That's a good start. If this particular group can be reached out to and you reach out to others as well, I think it's possible to start changing the tide, or let's say the manner in which we perceive Bharat and how these popular discussions, particularly on matters of identity and consciousness, take place. Three, I sense that they are much more open to facts and sources. And they certainly have the attention span to go beyond 3-minute videos and 5-minute videos. So the moment we believe that this is the only manner in which we actually should be reaching out to them, I think we will be doing injustice to their intelligence. We'll be insulting their intelligence. Narrative and packaging is always only a question of presentation. But the first question is whether those who wish to reach out to this particular age segment, have you done your homework or not? Second, do you have the guts to hold your position and speak with conviction without having to sugarcoat any aspect of your history, without having to brush under the carpet any aspect of your history? Because even the best of our representatives suffer from a certain degree of guilt when it comes to certain aspects of our history, particularly with respect to caste and discrimination, largely because we too have actually consumed colonialized versions of our history. So if we were to actually read up as much as possible, one, and two, place Bharat's experience on a global canvas and ask ourselves a simple question. Pray tell me, if this is your list of grievances against this particular culture, which culture do you think has not succumbed to any kind of discrimination or any kind of mistake ever? I'd like to see. And why don't you, let the culture which has never done a mistake hurl the first stone. I'd like to see that happen. That doesn't happen at all. So once you start doing that, then they get a better picture of Bharat's history. To speak like a true colonialized, educated Indian, you understand England better when you understand the rest of the world. Okay. So you understand Bharat better when you understand the rest of the world. That's been my experience. Two, in terms of changing the narrative, it is my view that when a society surrenders its civilizational options entirely at the feet of politics, and especially a society like Bharat, which has actually survived because of its self-reliant autonomous institutions which are independent of the state, then it ends up becoming an orphan society which is forced to place all its eggs in one basket. Okay? And I would certainly prefer a situation or a vision of the future where every political priority or where every political option that is available to the average voter competes for civilizational awareness, and it is part of the election, let's say, manifesto, so to speak, in one way or the other. Okay? So obviously, I understand that politics is the prime mover when it comes to certain aspects. But when society understands that it has an equal role to play in each of these aspects and doesn't surrender everything to this big brother called the state, that is when Bharat will live up to its civilizational experience. One of the reasons that we as a community and we as a civilization have survived despite the ravages of time and history since the first wave of invasions in 712 CE is because these institutions kept alive your continuity of life regardless of who held the reins of power. That's the reason that you've actually survived. Unfortunately, what has happened is post the advent of the Nehruvian socialist model and the Nehruvian concept of a state, which is a centralized version of a state, all your institutions have effectively been deprived, defanged, and they've been made subservient to the state. And that's precisely why today we do not have options even for basic protection, even for basic representation. Okay. These are certain aspects, if we were to discuss solutions, which can be certainly worked upon. I am fairly confident that technology is not my enemy. Technology gives me an amplifying effect and gives me the ability to voice an opinion, which perhaps 30 or 40 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to, because those were the days when finding your letter to the editor in the editor's column would be a matter of pride, and that would be treated as an achievement, which all of us would actually showcase and put a plaque on our homes. So gone are those days. Given this democratization of voices, how is it that we can actually channel social media, all these platforms, and the youthful energy to convey as much history as possible to them and give them the arguments that they need? In my interactions, in my limited interactions, students, or let's say this particular age bracket, is looking for arguments and ammunition to deal with their peer groups. That's their first, let's say, line of sight. In office spaces, in workplaces, and elsewhere, people want to be able to hit back with arguments to say, sorry, you're wrong. Give them the fodder that they need, you give them the ammunition they need. I've seen cases like Sabarimala and other places, people respond, whatever may have happened in the court of law. In the court of public opinion, the opinion has significantly changed in favor of the institution because of this. So all is lost, still a lot to be done. And I think that let's say the stars have aligned in a certain fashion. I would certainly put faith in that and hope that all of us move in that particular direction and give this particular generation the benefit of the doubt, notwithstanding the influences that it is subjected to.
Rishabh, and then you can take it forward with Amish. Yeah.
Firstly, I want to thank you, and I want to thank you as not just as somebody who've known because of our association, but the fact that you've actually helped curate the show. And today I'm really, I feel this from the bottom of my heart, because this kind of a discussion is what young people need. And I was just sitting and I was just listening and taking notes, saying, yes, this is also something, and this is also something that we should do. And even so, even this one. So firstly, want to thank the network and you for putting together Yuva Bharat and allowing it time on television. And in regards to Amish, what Amish did mention, I'm just so happy that he's with us. He said that I represent the future of India, but I'd say the organization has the future of India in it. I'm so very grateful that there are people such as you who write and who provide inspiration. Now I know why we have J. Sai Deepak, who you keep telling me, saying you need to listen to him more. I don't understand Bharat as well as all three of you do, but from the very little interaction that I've had with people such as you, I've begun to understand that the Bharat that I came to understand, or the India that I have grown up in, is a very anglicized version of what Bharat should be. And this is somebody who essentially understood more of the West and less of India growing up. And this had to do a lot with our school education, a lot with peer circles, lot with the way we were brought up per se. So I understand the need for a Bharat reset in terms of the narrative per se. And I completely agree to the points that were made in the sense that young people's memory span is not just 3 minutes. But that's where I would like to, differ a little bit from the vast interaction that I've had with young people. Majority of us, me included, suffer from that 3 minute to 4 minute thing. You are, and probably Amish are the few who are in the other bracket who will have the attention span of 15, 20 minutes or an hour or even more. So to be able to hit the nail on the head, unfortunately what happens is that they have those 3-4 minutes, and in that those videos that are put across on social media or the things that they see is the Bharat they understand. And the problem is a lot of the students who work in different countries, say, for example, in the United Kingdom or in the United States of America, they're dealing, like you rightly said, with peer circles and with people who essentially understand Bharat in a particular way. Plus, then unfortunately, they see certain elements of our society. I'm not saying it's the media's fault, but I'm saying certain elements of our society and certain elements of state that basically project Bharat in a particular manner, which is why I think the whole Bharat narrative that we hope to reset, that even I hope that, a younger generation sees Bharat different from what I saw it, because I understood Bharat as an India that was left behind by the British, and essentially this is what it is. And then eventually you aspire to study at Oxford, then you come back and you do ABCD XYZ, and this is the Indian dream. But India is so much more than that. It's a land of opportunities. And today is something that we're seeing. But the new education policy came after 35 odd years, and which is kind of baffling. As I grow up, I kind of understand, the change that needs to be brought about. But how do you set, and let me take this to Amish and ask him, how do you do this Bharat reset, the narrative reset, when essentially there is, apart from the state, it's also society who's largely responsible, and society is never going to be homogeneous in nature. And that's the beauty of our democracy. But how do we make sure that the right kind of messaging is going across to the young people?
Look, a narrative is a combination of a few things of how it can be said. One is the power of storytelling. Guru Dickinson said beautifully that the universe is not made up of atoms, it is made up of stories. India, for most of human history, had amongst the best storytellers ever. Our stories spread throughout the world, and our stories didn't need to be carried on the swords of conquerors. They actually attracted just by themselves. So much of Southeast Asia, Central Asia, more than 50% of the ancient world, pre-first millennium world, was actually Indic in some way. They actually accepted our culture without any conquerors going. It's because our culture attracted them through our stories, through our fashion, through our food, through our spirituality. So can we do, and that is in our hands. It's in us, or it's in the hands of us in the larger society. The only thing in this, however, is we must celebrate all kinds of stories. As long as it's rooted in India, what difference does it make? And our ancestors always had this approach that you can have multiple, interpretations. So, the stories of Lord Shiva are different in the land that I come from, UP, different in East India, different in South India. Doesn't matter. They're all celebrating Lord Shiva, right? So we must have different stories, different food, different fashions, and we must speak of it. Right? That is something that the society can do. But there is something that the state can do as well. The modern era has the most powerful state ever in human history. And India is fortunately a democracy. We might keep criticizing our politicians, but look, our politicians know their street. Okay, whatever they may or may not know, they know their street. They know what will get them votes. Right? If it is up to us to put pressure on our politicians that they have to change the education system, because any storyteller, no matter how popular he or she is, any spiritual guru, no matter how, can never have the power of the education system, right? So we have to put pressure to make sure that the education system reconnects to our roots. Our maths classes should teach of Bodhayana and Aryabhatta before we teach Pythagoras. Bodhayana discovered Pythagoras' theorem before Pythagoras, as most Indians don't know, right? Yeah. Our medical schools must teach of Charak and Shushruta. Our literature should begin with the Bhasa and Kalidasa and Thiruvalluvar, not with Shakespeare.
Right.
So I'll just build on two of the dots that Rishabh and Amish both presented respectively. So one is the question of attention span, and the second is the question of dependence on state. So let me try and connect these two dots. So think of narrative building as a series of concentric circles, wherein at the core is the production of knowledge. And as you go closer to the perimeter and outward from the center, you're looking at dissemination of the knowledge that is produced, and therefore then knowledge becomes education. So dissemination comes at the second level. So when the state becomes responsible for production of knowledge, there's a serious problem there because the state is subject to multiple pulls and tugs. Production of knowledge should be in the realm of the society, whereas you use the state effectively as a conduit because it is uniquely placed to create a multiplier effect. And therefore, it has the ability to disseminate knowledge in multiple ways. So the relationship between the state and the society is that the society is the producer of knowledge, the family is the inculcator of values, and the state is effectively the disseminator of the knowledge that is produced.
True, very rightly said, and I think we're running out of time. So, but I'd love to take this conversation forward sometime soon. But the only thing I think we can say is that we need to start reading. We need to keep our minds open and start reading to find out who we are. And for me, the starting point was to read this Constituent Assembly debates of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel and Loknath Mishra. It is very exhaustive, but then they also gave you a broad map of how and what they envisaged our country should be and the arguments thereof. And somewhere those voices were not heard, or perhaps they were ignored. And I think that's a starting point. Secondly, is that can we go back and say, what is my mother tongue and can I learn it? Can I start learning my mother tongue, even if it is late in my life? Can I just take extra classes and read? And then once I learned my mother tongue, can I read at least one book a month in my mother tongue? And if that can happen, then the orientation and this reset, perhaps one of the first baby steps that we can take. Rishabh, you wanted to say something, and then we wind up.
Yeah, I just real quick. I just wanted to say that I concur with almost everything that has been said. Whether 1,200 years of invasion or whether a few lesser, that is something that a lot of people would debate. But I know this one thing for sure, that if you don't know where you've come from, you won't know where you're going. And unfortunately, what is written in our history books is only a version of India or a version of Bharat, which only makes us, unfortunately, more subservient and more anglicized. And that's something, as interacting with young people on a day-to-day basis, I can safely say that it's the need of the hour that we need to address. Some pressure that we need to put on the state, and also some responsibility of the civil society in order to step up and do much more. But thank you very much, Amish and Sai, and thank you, Anand, for allowing this discussion to take place.
No, we'll take this forward.
I may add a very minor thing. Thank you, Rishabh, for bringing us together, and thank you, Anand, for always hosting shows and bringing shows which are normally not put up on TV, on subjects that are normally not discussed. Thank you for this, and thank you for doing this for Mother India.
No, true, and we'll continue to do this. I'm eliciting a promise from all of us present here that we will take this conversation forward in the near future, perhaps closer to the your Independence Day. We do a mega series and then take this story forward. I'm just going to wind up saying thank you to all of you and leaving you with a very simple thought that we as a nation were able to devise a language which need not have been written, but it was a perfect metric system that it coded your brain that once you learned it, you will never forget. That's the beauty of and we have not mainstreamed that language. We've forgotten that language. I'm talking about Sanskrit. And we also are the nation which is the mother, or which is perhaps the land where the oldest language is spoken. And we've not mainstreamed that language and the literature in that language, and that is Tamil. Two languages which are the essence of our country are not mainstream. And that's where I'm saying my simple thing is this narrative reset starts with learning our languages. Thank you very much. We'll take this conversation forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Namaste.